Welcome to Hey Coach Tony, the top broadcast of youth sports, where you get to call in and give your opinion. Call 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Give your opinion. And now here's your host, Tony Fiorino.
Hey, happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony. I am your host, Tony Fiorino, and as you know, each week we tackle the hottest topics in youth sports, and as always, we want to know what you guys have to say. Give us a call here in the studio at 855-439-2622. Hey, I was gone for a while. In fact, I think it was like a month. Adam just reminded me that I've been gone. So I got a lot to catch up on, and hopefully we can get to all of it. Let's see. We had the U.S. gymnast who had won her silver medal, decided to give an entire global TV audience the gas face while on the Olympic podium. Also, just this past week, there was yet another update on the Penn State scandal. Namely, there was an excerpt from a new book that describes Joe Paterno as, and I quote, sobbing uncontrollably when he was fired. Heck, there was even a major news story about cheating in sports again. And this is a story that violates the very moral fabric of competition itself. And in the game that is absolutely supposed to personify the American spirit. Well, have I got your attention? Good, because it's going to be a great show. But before we get into all that, I want to start things off by waking up all you coaches. I got a question for you out there. Let me ask you this. We all know that as coaches, we put a tremendous amount of time and energy into what we do. And some of us actually impact the lives of young men and women. Question for you is this. What do these young athletes owe us back in return? I really want to know what you think about that one. I want you to think about that, and don't just give me the company answer. I want to know what you really think. After everything that you put into developing a young athlete, what is the level of decency in terms of what they ought to give back? I heard from some of you folks during the week with responses that range from, the kids owe us everything. They owe us plenty, down to the kids owe us absolutely nothing. Well, sometimes, I should say most of the time, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. In fact, I got a couple of really decent emails that I want to read, but I also want to hear from you coaches on this one directly. So give me a call in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. And let me know in general terms, what is the obligation of a young athlete to give something back to his or her coaches? So while we're waiting for your calls, I want to welcome back Adam. We were all gone. Good to see you, buddy. How's everything?
Pretty good. Good to be back.
You're making your wave to the camera. You're making your YouTube debut as there's painting going on in the studios. Adam and I are stuck here in the luxurious ESPN studios here in Brookfield, Connecticut. So if you notice something different, that's what it is. While we're waiting for your calls, I do want to get to a couple of these emails. Matter of fact, I got an email from Patrice in Mount Vernon who writes in and says, "Hey, Coach Tony. Kids don't owe coaches anything. They owe it to themselves to achieve success. I love watching my former players become successful, and my heart aches when they don't. The only thing I ever ask for and expect is respect. Just last week and over the past month, 8 former players, all of whom played college ball, came back and played with and against the returning players. It was an absolute joy to see this. Those kids felt inclined to give back. Did they owe it? Absolutely not. Was I grateful and happy? Unequivocally, yes. I have kids who have played junior college up through D1, and I'm proud of them all. They owe me nothing." I don't know. I really don't know, and that's kind of the premise for the whole show here. I think most coaches, and I said please refrain from giving the company answer. I'm not going to go so far as to say that Patrice in Mount Vernon gave us the company answer. But you know what? You're going to hear a lot of that aw shucks kind of stuff coming from coaches, and usually from accomplished coaches. You never want to say they owe us something back. But boy, Patrice, obviously, they've given you something back. And the reason for that is you obviously did something right in the 4 years that you had those kids. I'm assuming we're talking about high school kids since you're talking about them moving on to college. So obviously you did something right. And, there are times when the coaches do something right and maybe, there is no further relationship. And that's kind of the part that I'm wondering about as we move forward in the course of the day. And again, 855-HEY-COACH is the studio line here. Got another email from one of the local guys, Kevin, in Shelton. Said, hey, Coach Tony, this is a loaded question. I've coached high school football, baseball, basketball, middle school baseball, little league, youth soccer, and youth football since 1985, without a year off. I understand that a good and true high school coach does a lot for their players as far as helping them find a college that might fit their playing ability. However, good coaches, even great coaches, can be found at every level. Coaches are more than the person who teaches players how to execute a play. They need to teach the skills necessary for the next level. They need to teach the parents to understand good sportsmanship. Coaching at the middle school level, my philosophy was to run practices like clinics that focused on improving skills and learning new strategies and the game. I left high school coaching for a few years to coach at the youth level. To coach youth at the level they should be coached and not have to fall victim to the coach who is there only to make his kid a star. I've probably received more thank yous from those athletes and those parents than I did from the high school athletes and parents from the various teams that I coached. I don't think anybody owes me a thank you. I've had fabulous relationships with many of my athletes, both boys and girls. I think oftentimes it's difficult for the student athlete to understand what a coach has done for them as a player, a person, or even as a parent. I've reached some athletes far better than others. That's just human nature. Sometimes athletes don't reach out to a coach or a teacher that has done a lot for them because of the parents. Parents see the game, not the practice. They do not hear all the comments made or see the care a coach shows to a player when they come off the field or the court. This keeps many parents from appreciating and understanding what a good coach does. Oftentimes, this lack of understanding leads to a parent who does not demonstrate a grateful attitude, which is then transferred to the athlete. Coaching is complex. I, as well as most of the coaches I've worked with, do not coach to get the thank you. Players that come back to visit the programs show their gratitude by just showing up. That's important to me. But again, I don't believe that any athlete or student I've ever had owes me anything. Well, thanks, Kevin, first of all. It's a great email. And I think at the end there, I think he started having some Vietnam flashbacks about some parent issues because, quite frankly, none of that made a whole lot of sense. But obviously, we know that Kevin's had to deal with his share of parents in the Shelton area. So if you're listening, Shelton, apparently Coach Kevin's not thrilled. But in any event, I'm going to leave that part out for a second with the parents because I want to point something out. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. I would say that the majority of the coaches that I have either spoken or emailed with during the course of this week tend to have a fairly consistent opinion about the players not owing anything to the coaches. Now, here's where this gets a little bit interesting, and I want you to hear me out. Adam, you can play too. Anybody familiar with the name Pop Herring? Adam?
No, I have no idea.
All right, nope.
Never heard of it.
All right, maybe you're familiar with this name. Michael Jordan.
Of course.
All right, great. Well, guess what? Pop Herring was Jordan's high school basketball coach. And this is the guy who became famous, or rather infamous, for being the guy who cut Jordan from varsity his sophomore year. He wasn't cut from the basketball program. He was cut from varsity and he played JV. So now I'm going to ask the same question but with a little twist. So it's the same question, going to sound a little bit different. Does arguably the greatest and wealthiest basketball player of all time owe anything to his high school coach who is broke, alcoholic, and mentally ill? Think about that one for a second. In fact, give me a call and let me know how this changes things. 855-HEY-COACH. 855-439-2622. And while we're waiting for your calls, again, think about this. We all know that Jordan is beyond wealthy. Agreed? Of course. Well, guess what? Pop Herring is not. The guy's broke. He is an alcoholic, and he suffers from mental illness. And on top of that, he was recently arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct while he was housing a man who was charged with murdering a woman and burying her rotting corpse in Pop's backyard. All right, I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. Now, again, it's important to note that Pop Herring was not connected at all in any way, shape, or form with the actual crime. But he did indeed have to be bailed out. And who bailed him out? Michael Jordan, right? Nope. Not at all. The guy who bailed him out is a guy by the name of Thomas Lake. He is with Sports Illustrated. Well, let's forget about what the relationship Lake might have with Pop or why he bailed him out. But doesn't this shed an entirely new light on the question I just asked earlier? A guy like Michael Jordan can easily afford to set this guy up for the rest of his life, much less simply helping him out in what is clearly a time of need. Adam, what do you think?
It's pretty. I mean, come on. However, I think.
Let's start with your answer first. Does Michael Jordan have an obligation?
I don't
to
think
his
he
coach?
has an obligation, but I mean, like this man is clearly sick. I mean, he could, I don't know, maybe offer some help, maybe at least try to get him in a rehab or something.
Well, 855 Hey Coach is the number here, 855-439-2622, and we'll continue to hear from you guys about your general thoughts on what kids owe back to your coaches. But before we go to break, there's something I want to point out here. In my opinion, what's important in this story isn't so much that Thomas Lake, this guy who bailed out Pop, it's not important that Thomas Lake wrote a piece in Sports Illustrated back in January about Pop and how his life has hit the skids. What's really interesting is this. The fact that Jordan did not actually, you know what? Let's before we go to break, let's go to your calls. Hey caller, you're on Hey Coach Tony. What's your name? Where you're calling from?
Steve from Katona.
Steve from Katona is on the line. Our old buddy Steve from Katona. How you doing, buddy?
All right, Tony, how are you? I haven't spoken to you in a while. How's it going?
I was doing great until I got the call from you, but I can deal with you on a Saturday morning. Steve, what do you make of this whole notion of what do these athletes owe back? I don't know if you want to talk specifically about the Jordan situation or if you want to talk in general terms, but what's on your mind?
I don't think that, listen, the Jordan situation, this is, 30 years ago when Jordan was cut, 35 years ago. We don't know a thing about Pop. Pop has been arrested for, harboring a murderer?
No.
Jordan
Hang on.
To go bail him out?
He wasn't arrested for harboring a murderer, even though you could make that spin. He was indeed harboring an alleged murderer. We know that. He was arrested because when the police showed up to his house, he went a little Daffy Duck because he was drunk. So he was arrested for drunk and disorderly.
Okay. Now, do we know if Michael's ever tried to help Pop in the past? Maybe he has on several occasions, and maybe Pop has just not been able to respond. I just don't think it's such a blanket statement that Michael might owe Pop something.
Well, I'm not sure he does or if he doesn't, but what we do know is I believe it's been something like 18 years since the two have had any contact. And I believe the only reference to Pop that came out of the mouth of Jordan was, when did Jordan go into the Hall of Fame? 2004? When did Jordan go Hall of Fame? 2004? Whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
When he made his acceptance speech into the Hall of Fame, he made reference to Pop by simply saying something like, "When you cut me, dude, you made a mistake." And that was the extent of it. So something's not right there. But the question still comes back to, in general terms, Steve, and listen, I know you played for some really cool coaches. We've had conversations in the past. I have as well. Do we, as former athletes, owe something back to our coaches?
It's on a personal level, but I personally, my coach out at St. John the Baptist on Long Island,
Buddy Core.
Coach, you know Buddy Core? Yeah.
I know Buddy Core. Yes, Buddy Core is a Long Island legend.
Fantastic. Right, Buddy has helped more kids than you could ever imagine. He was fantastic. So I would have I would have walked through fire for this guy. So I think that and I would help Buddy now. I'd be there in a second if Buddy needed anything. But it's funny, Tom, because along those lines, I'm just getting in a car to head to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, because a high school friend of mine who actually played ball for Buddy, he is the head coach of the Fairfield team, and I asked him last week, I said, have any of the parents thanked you for what you've done? And he said, well, they don't owe me anything. I do this because I love it. But he did say they have all been, phenomenally gracious, and because he spends a ton of time with them also. You wonder in 20 or 25 years from now that, this head coach is likely going to make a big difference in a lot of these kids' lives, again, 25 years in the future.
So this is Bill Murray, the guy I saw who his kid just took a fastball in the face just the other day, right?
That is correct. I didn't want to use a name, but you just did. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just so you know, because he's a Fairfield, Connecticut guy, I'm going to try to track Bill down and get him to come into the show. Hopefully he gets out of that losers bracket and does some damage. But so you're friends with Bill Murray?
I'm very good friends with him, yes.
All right, well, do me a favor. When you see Bill today, you tell him everybody at the Hey Coach Tony show is pulling for them. How's this kid doing, by the way?
He's doing fine. He's likely to play today. It took about 5 stitches in the lips. His teeth are intact. The braces are pretty shot, but the braces protected the teeth.
Guy lives in Fairfield. He can afford new braces. All right, listen, Steve, thank you very much for the call. Tell the guys we wish them all the best of luck. We're going to have to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about what we owe back to our coaches as athletes. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. This and every Saturday at 9 a.m. on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. And by the way, I just learned that if you're out there with your smartphone, your iPhone, you can now catch us on iHeartRadio live. Just search for ESPN Danbury or WINE Danbury and click in for some Hey Coach Tony goodness. And by the way, if I'm guessing you're like most people walking the earth in that you just love the Hey Coach Tony show. But sometimes you want to talk general mainstream sports instead of just youth sports. Well, guess what? Starting right after Labor Day, you can hear me every weekday at 1 p.m. That's right. The Tony Fiorino Show is going to begin airing right here on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio every day at 1 o'clock. So join me for lunch every day as we talk about the most pressing stories around the wide world of sports. And remember to hit us up on iHeartRadio. All right. Before we went to break, we got a call from our buddy Steve in Katona, who is on his way to the Mecca, Williamsport, Pennsylvania, to check out our local boys. Fairfield 12-year-old boys are in the losers bracket after dropping a tough one, I believe, to California. And Bill Murray is the coach. He and his gang of 12-year-olds are looking to wreak some havoc on the rest of the U.S. So good luck, guys, while we're watching. Before the break, we were talking about what do we owe our coaches as former athletes. And as coaches, what do our former athletes owe us? The question seemed a little more straightforward before I threw into the equation that Michael Jordan's former high school basketball coach, Pop Herring, is in a bit of a dilemma in that he is broke, he is mentally ill, he is alcoholic, and apparently has a soft spot for murderers. Now, what I was alluding to before the break is, in my opinion, what's really important in this story is not so much that Thomas Lake, the guy from Sports Illustrated who bailed out Pop instead of Jordan, it's not so much that Thomas Lake wrote a piece in Sports Illustrated in January about Pop and how his life has hit the skids. What's really interesting is this. The fact that Jordan did not bail out Pop upset Thomas Lake. Upset him enough that he wrote another piece. It was a public letter to Michael Jordan, published in Sports Illustrated, openly calling him out for not helping his down-on-his-luck former high school coach. Now, a lot of people think this letter makes Jordan look pretty bad. Quite frankly, I am not sure who looks worse, Michael Jordan or Thomas Lake in Sports Illustrated. I don't know if you saw the letter. You can easily go find it. It's not a great read, but there are things in there that you're going to want to discuss. And obviously, we want to get your thoughts on this as well, so you can give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Now, Adam, I don't know. Do you know the story? Did you see the letter in Sports Illustrated?
You know, I've seen this article. I didn't read it. When was this letter published?
It was just in the last Sports Illustrated, or maybe it was maybe a week or two ago.
So,
all right, but it's good. It's good that you didn't.
Okay.
So now let's talk about this. Now we know that Jordan's former coach is alcohol. I'm not going to keep saying what's all the things that are wrong with Pop. What do you think about the fact that he was in jail and Michael Jordan did not bail him out? Now, I don't know if Jordan knew he was in jail or did not. I think he did actually know. What do you think about that? I mean, the guy had to play some role in Michael Jordan becoming who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he could have done. I feel like he could have done something. I mean, if he didn't know, then that, okay, that's fine. But if he was like, oh, by the way, Mike, Pop was arrested. Just thought I'd let you know. Then he'd be like, oh yeah, maybe I'll help him out.
Somebody write him a check.
Yeah, write him a check.
I got you. Well, allegedly Jordan hasn't seen his former coach since 1994 is what the article said. And as far as I can see it, and again, I'm kind of reading between the lines, but as far as I can see it, Thomas Lake's point is that Michael Jordan is a very wealthy man who apparently lives too comfortably. His former coach is having a rough go. And, again, if you read the letter, Michael Jordan has an obligation to lend a hand. In his letter, this guy Thomas Lake offers solutions, several solutions, by the way, from the large and ridiculous, like Jordan should build Pop a new house, hire him full-time caretakers, and this ranges all the way down to the small and even more ridiculous, like just give him a nice pair of Nikes. Now, again, here's the reality of the situation. Do I think Jordan should help this guy out? Yes. And for a number of different reasons. Do I think he has an obligation? Do I think he owes Pop anything? Absolutely not. And by the way, let's talk about that for a second. Why do I think Jordan should have helped out? If for nothing else, you keep an idiot like Thomas Lake from writing a scathing letter that you didn't bail out your former high school coach when, it's a drop in the bucket. Or I should say it's more like a drop in the ocean for a Michael Jordan. I mean, that's just the way that it is. Secondly, when you're such a public figure as Michael Jordan still is, why would you ever want to risk any negative publicity? But that's what makes this kind of interesting as well. But let me continue because I got a problem with Tom. If you haven't figured it out, I have a problem with Thomas Lake. I am not the brightest guy in the world. But even I can connect some dots here. Let me ask you this. Anybody else think that maybe, just maybe, this obnoxious and sarcastic letter would have never been written if it wasn't a mechanism to support the article that Thomas Lake wrote about Pop back in January? Come on, guy, grow up. Anybody with a shred of humanity would like to think Jordan would bend over backwards to help an old coach. And again, I want to touch on that one in a little bit because there's something there. But here's the other problem I got with Thomas Lake. You call yourself a journalist, and for a reputable magazine like Sports Illustrated. Well, as a journalist, maybe you should ask yourself the question that anybody who read that dumb letter asked themselves. Now, I love dropping bombs on Adam. So I'm going to ask, what's the question everybody should be asking themselves after reading a letter that scathes like that at Michael Jordan for not helping out his coach? By the way, Adam was up at 3 a.m. driving to JFK this morning.
So
Let me tell you what the question is that I asked myself immediately after reading this piece. Why didn't Jordan help out his former coach? Hey, Thomas Lake, like you said, the financial fortitude it would take for Jordan to set this guy up for the rest of his life would be nothing more than a rounding error on Jordan's tax return. We know that. That is a fact. So ask yourself the real question. There's got to be a reason for this. There's got to be a reason for this. Why didn't he ask this question? There's got to be a reason. Well, it could be one of only a couple of things. First, Thomas Lake, maybe you weren't smart enough to ask or even think of that question. And by the way, I didn't want to make it sound stupid because apparently Adam didn't think of that question either. So, but you got an excuse, guy. You're running on fumes. All right. So first, maybe you weren't smart enough to ask that question. Second, Michael Jordan perhaps is indeed the devil incarnate and truly wants to see this guy suffer simply because he cut Jordan from varsity his sophomore year. That is a possibility.
That's what I think. I think he's holding his I mean, when he got inducted, he said you made a mistake. Like
but he jokingly said you made a mistake, dude. I mean,
I still think I don't know, man.
Well, you know what?
I don't know. He seems like a guy who'd hold a grudge.
I won't say that's not the reason.
Okay.
I listed it as one of the possible reasons why this question wasn't asked.
All right.
Third reason is Thomas Lake. Maybe you did ask that question. Maybe you just didn't like the answer that you got. After all, maybe there really is a good reason. And if there was a good reason, what would that mean? You wouldn't be able to write that stupid letter. Possibility. Or fourth, and I think 2 and 4 maybe have some semblance of reality. The fourth one is you did reach out and you did ask the question, why didn't you help out? And maybe nobody in Michael Jordan's camp felt you were relevant enough to give you a response. So maybe the grudge here lies with Thomas Lake. Maybe Thomas Lake put a bunch of innuendo and assumption into a letter that disgraced both himself and the institution of Sports Illustrated. Bottom line, guess what? I don't care. Doesn't matter. Because based on what I read, Thomas Lake is a proud supporter of Obamacare and the Democratic Party. Because if you think Jordan is, because all the subtleties in that letter point to, hey, Jordan is obligated because he can afford to do it. If Jordan's obligated primarily based on how much money he has, there's a word for that, and that word is communism. Wow, how's that for leaving some dots for people to connect?
It's a political show now.
I'm Rush Limbaugh, but not quite as fat. All right, anyway, you know what we're going to do? We want to see if you guys have anything to add based on what you've heard so far. We still talk about some of the other things we did. As far as in general terms, getting back to what we owe back to our high school coaches. Before we go to break, though, I want to remind you we have a new sponsor for the show. As parents, we know that each of our kids dreams of making the travel team, the college team, maybe even going pro. Well, brand new facility called House of Sports in Westchester County can help bring dreams to life one champion at a time. The House of Sports is a brand new 120,000 square foot state-of-the-art athletic complex. It is one of the largest in the entire Northeast, and it is jam-packed with features for athletes of every skill level. Check out some of the things you're going to find at the House of Sports. 4 high school regulation hardwood basketball courts with 26 adjustable baskets and a 5,000 square foot dedicated shooting lab. I never heard it called a shooting lab, but apparently it's very scientific. There's also an 80-yard indoor turf field that can be divided into 5 individual fields. There is an 11,000 square foot performance center for speed, strength, and agility training. There are 2 40-yard sprint tracks. There's a plyometric zone. There's a speed zone with 3 speed treadmills. There's a weight room. There are 4 team rooms where you can use a whiteboard and do film sessions. There's even a sports cafe and a bar with 8 party rooms. So whether it's a bar mitzvah, birthday, whatever it is, it can accommodate up to 100 people in these rooms. So whether it's hoops, lacrosse, baseball, House of Sports has the expert coaches to ensure that your kid gets to that next stage of development, regardless of what level they're at when they get there. Try House of Sports free this September. Free. And unleash the champion that lies within. Go to houseofsportsny.com or call them at 855-ALL-SPORTS. That's houseofsportsny.com or 855-ALL-SPORTS for more information. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. As I said, we are on every Saturday morning, 9 a.m., on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. Want to remind you also to please keep a lookout. Like I said, if you just love some Tony Fiorino and want to talk general sports, starting, I believe it's September 4th, the Tuesday right after Labor Day, the Tony Fiorino Show premieres on ESPN Radio. Every weekday at 1 o'clock, you can talk general sports. Football season is heating up. We're going to be staring right down the barrel of playoffs, and I'm sure there are going to be some other relevant topics that we're going to want to hit every day, 1 o'clock. Grab your sandwich and turn on your radio and join me. Hey, before the break, we were just wrapping up on the whole idea of what do the coaches owe, and I'm going to let Adam speak for a second because he apparently had some. Well, you had some passion before the break.
Oh yeah.
But before we get to you, there was one email that actually I got in. From Coach Ed in Connecticut, who I'm going to put kind of the last nail in the coffin as far as the high school coaches go. He wrote in and said, Coach Tony, I'm not sure if they owe us anything that we don't owe them. I think respect, honesty, and best effort is owed to the coach. I only have about 22 years of coaching high school sports, and to hear from kids that I coached, even during my first seasons, is all I need. Not everyone likes you as a coach. But 5, 10, 15 years after you coach a kid and they hug you and still call you coach is all that they owe. But what they owed was formed from mutual respect and honesty during those high school years. Now, this is an email, and so I read that literally. I don't believe Coach Ed is trying to say that the kids owe him hugs. It's just not that kind of show. But I think in general terms, the good coaches all say the same thing. And it's not owed, but boy, if you're a good coach, you really do expect it. Even the kids that dislike you when you're coaching them tend to grow up and realize, wow, this guy had my best interest. And by the way, just to let you off the hook, as you know, I coach 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids, and I still hug them when I see them. There are kids that I haven't coached in years that when I see them, I give them a hug. And so I'm always a big fan of the hugs. Just make sure there's always another adult around who's there to watch. All right. No, getting back to Adam. Adam has his own insights as to why Michael Jordan did not reach out to Pop. And we can't, use the same language we used during break, but I want to get
it in a very I was basically saying he's just not a nice guy per se.
And why do you think he's not? Wait, hang on. Are you saying he's not a nice guy, or do you think he's not friendly with Pop?
I just think he's not a nice guy in general.
Now that's a big statement. Michael Jordan is not. You heard it here.
He's a nice guy. No.
If this comes out, the story was broken right here on the Hey Coach Tony show.
Groundbreaking.
All right. Well, you know what? I will buy that, and I think I'm going to leave I'm going to leave that one open. If you still want to call in, it's 855 Hey Coach. It's 855-439-2622. But before this show is over, and Adam, I didn't even tell you about this one because I want to see if you have been listening and following any of the sports rags.
Man. All right.
It would be irresponsible of me not to touch on a story that I am sure you have all heard. In the world of sports, while we're teaching our kids to play clean and to give your best effort, just say no, all that stuff. Just when you think that era of cheating and performance-enhancing substances is finally behind us, a story broke in America's favorite game that shocked the world. Are you aware with what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
Okay. Adam, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know. Is it like professional sports?
Well, let's put it this way. Most of you are talking about Melky Cabrera.
Yes.
All right. So Melky Cabrera.
That's what I. Okay. All right.
Well, Adam, as usual, you are wrong. Okay, that's not news. Melky Cabrera, guy who's in a free agent season, caught with performance enhancing substances, taking testosterone. That's not news. You want to hear news?
What do you got?
All right. And again, this just shreds the very core of the moral fabric that binds this country together. One of the top young Scrabble players in the country has been kicked out of the game's national championship tournament in Florida after he was caught pocketing the highly coveted blank letter tiles. You heard me right. Scandal is rocking the Scrabble world. The executive director of the National Scrabble Association confirmed that a male player, he said it was male player, was ejected from the 350 player in round 20. This 350 player national event in round 24 of a 28 round event. This was in the home stretch, and they finally caught this guy. Well, the cheating was spotted by a player at a nearby table who noticed that the player in question did indeed conceal not one, but both of the blank tiles by dropping them on the floor.
Wow.
No. See, Adam, I don't think you truly grasp
I don't understand
the magnitude of this situation. Do you even know what the blank tile is in a Scrabble game?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. The blank tiles can be used as wild card letters.
Wild card.
They can be anything. Think about it. If you use a blank tile on a triple letter score tile within a triple word score tile, and you make it like a Z or a Q or an X, you kidding me? The effects could shift the very fabric of modern-day society. I mean, forget steroids. Forget Tebow. This little scallywag is messing around with the moral order in America here. Well, when confronted by the tournament director, this guy admitted to it, and the tournament director went on record as saying, and I quote, "Cheating does happen no matter what. People will try to do this," he said. It's the first time it's happened in a venue this big, though. It's unfortunate, and the Scrabble world is abuzz. The Internet is abuzz. I mean, you heard it here first, guys. You absolutely heard it here. Hey, Coach Tony Show first. He would not identify the player by name or age because he's a minor. But he did allude to the level of intensity at these tournaments by saying, and again, I will quote, "It gets pretty deep. We are one step away from drug testing." Okay? Now, while this guy said this was the first time the national tournament has dealt with this scandal, this incident could shine a brighter light on other advantages players have been known to employ during this national championship tournament. Even before Tuesday's cheating incident was detected, It was well known that some players take minerals known as alleged brain boosters.
What?
Where the hell are we, man?
Brain boosters?
Brain boosters.
Why haven't we? What?
I'm at a loss. Oh,
Brain boosters.
Wait. I'm going to make a Scrabble joke.
All right.
I'm at a loss for words. Oh, boo. Boo, Coach Tony. All right, well, listen.
Boosters.
Brain boosters. It's like the smart pills that Flounder took in National Lampoon's Animal House. They were just laxatives. Do you even know what Animal House is?
Yeah, of course.
All right, just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. All right, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to go to a quick break. And, when we come back, we're going to wrap on a couple of other things here that I want to touch on. And, it's always great to be back. You're listening to Hey, Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back after this.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey, Coach Tony every Saturday, 9 a.m. on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. And very recently available on iHeartRadio. Just search for WINE Connecticut or ESPN Danbury. You should be able to find it. You know what? I was about to get into another story, and something literally just hit me. Adam is obsessing over Michael Jordan. He is looking – apparently Nike grosses, what, $1 billion?
$1 billion.
$1 billion in revenue
sales.
Just from Jordan sales. Just from Jordan sales. He also is a majority owner of the Bobcats. Mm-hmm. And Adam is insisting he's not a good guy. So nope. No. Hang on, because here's what I want to ask you. How can – he can't be. Here's why it's not possible. How can Michael Jordan be a bad guy? He has just interacted with so many people. He is such a public figure. If Michael Jordan was the true degenerate lowlife, or even just not a great guy, wouldn't someone have come out looking for? He would have had to do something where someone would have just said, "I'm going to the press and I'm going to tell this story about you and that story about you." Even if just looking for a payday, somebody might even just try to make something up.
There was other stuff in here saying he paid off some chick $250,000 to be quiet on some relationship back in 2006.
I did that too. I mean, everyone, who hasn't?
Former lover Carla. I don't remember this at all.
Well, exactly. But I mean, who hasn't paid off?
Yeah, I got. Yeah.
Who hasn't paid a hooker to keep her mouth shut? Come on.
And he's been known. Wasn't there like gambling stuff with it? He was all sorts of gambling.
Well, there was rumor that Michael Jordan's entire baseball career was nothing more than a way to divert attention from his gambling problems, and that has never been confirmed nor denied. I don't know if necessarily gambling makes you a bad guy. Matter of fact, many places in the country gambling is legal. But again, if Michael Jordan was a bad person, like you insist,
I do.
He is a bad person, I would think someone would have come forward with something at this point. That's just me. All right, listen, fall is quickly approaching, and while we're all thrilled that our kids are going back to school, it also means that fall sports are kicking up, and one of them is soccer. And I'm not going to hit this topic too hard, but I want to kind of put a teaser out there because there is a trend developing in high school soccer, and if your kid happens to be anything resembling an elite player, you're going to be faced with some really difficult decisions sometime soon, and here's why. Top soccer players around the country are now being forced to choose. We knew this was going to happen at some point, but they're being forced to choose between their elite academy teams and their school teams. It's just as simple as that. When high school soccer players make it back for a preseason ritual of all the sprints and the drills and the scrimmages, and that's all coming up. It's all happening right now. Some of the best players are not going to be there. And it's because they've quit their school teams to play for a development academy squad. This development academy is run by the U.S. Soccer Federation. And for many of the elite players at the high school age, it's a farm system. At least on the men's side, it's a farm system to the men's national team. And the sad part is, these kids really did not have much of a choice. The Federation this year has ordered players to choose between their school and the academy. So it doesn't mean you have to leave your school. But if you want to play for the academy, which is right now the top amateur system in the country, you do. You have to choose between your school and the academy. The academy will not allow you to play for your school team. The academy season is going to start 2 months early. It's starting in September. I think it starts right after Labor Day. And obviously that presses right into the high school calendar. It's a longer season. It's going to strengthen the U.S. program, which right now, and I'm not a huge soccer guy, especially after that whole debacle with my kid. Now we'll never be watching soccer. But apparently soccer is considered quite weak internationally. So this is the first time, I believe, ever that a sport is forcing athletes to say no to their school teams. We have absolutely alluded to this happening in many sports. AAU basketball, there's a lot of talk of that happening. Football, not so much. Football is like the last bastion of small-town American hometown goodness. Baseball, it's not as much of an issue because most of the summer teams really kick into gear after June when everyone is done. There's a little overlap, but even at the Bayside Yankees, we never tell a kid you don't play for high school. We actually tell them to prioritize high school. But yeah, this guy, Mark Koski, who's the director of sports and events for the National Federation of State High School Associations, that basically governs all high school athletics, said that boys are being asked to make this choice. But yeah, he confirmed girls are not. This is a one-of-a-kind, the guy said as he was quoted. We're hopeful this is only a soccer situation. I got to tell you, I don't know. I don't know if it's just a soccer situation. What I see this is a precedent. There is now an association that is legally allowed to tell a kid you cannot play for your school. So, I mean, we've read all the exposés. My buddy George Borman wrote that book. George Dorman. I said Borman. George Dorman from Sports Illustrated. He's a great writer. He wrote that Play Their Hearts Out, which turned out to be an exposé on AAU basketball. You don't think those money-hungry losers, those fat slobs who never picked up a basketball in their lives, you don't think the talons are out? You don't think they are swooping around the country looking to just gobble these kids up? That's what's next. I don't know how you coaches feel about that. If there's a soccer coach out there who knows what he's talking about, you got an opinion on it, give us a quick call, 855-HEY-COACH. I'm not sure how I feel about this, and I think next week we're going to try to grab a soccer coach or two. Clearly not my daughter's soccer coach, but we're going to a former soccer coach. By the way, hey, if my daughter's former soccer coaches are listening in, if you become alcoholic and elderly and mentally ill, and I'm not convinced that at least two of you aren't mentally ill, my daughter owes you nothing. No matter how famous she gets, she owes you nothing. And if you harbor a criminal and there are dead bodies in your backyard, don't hold your breath for the Fiorinos to bail you out. But I really think next week, I think that's what we're going to do next week. I think we're going to talk about this whole notion of where is this headed? Because once a precedent has been set, especially in the world of sports, entertainment's a close second. Once a precedent has been set, the floodgates are now open. This story becomes mainstream. I'm telling you, you're going to lose your soccer players, but watch in the winter, especially in the public schools where these kids are confined to where they can or cannot live. Watch these AAU low-life dirtbags start gobbling these kids up, especially these inner-city kids. Watch it happen because they got sponsors and they got exposure. Adam, what do you think about that in general terms? They're forcing the kids to choose between.
Forcing kids to choose.
In other words, play for my academy.
You get this.
You don't get to play for your school. That's it.
So they're taking the kids. I just want to make sure I got this.
Yeah.
They're taking the kids just to play. They're not like enrolled in that school.
Oh, no. It's not an academy meaning school. This is a sports academy. What they're saying is go to school, get your grades. But by the way, you don't need good grades.
But wait,
to play
how do they compete? Who do they compete against? These academies? They play.
I'm gonna have to research that more because obviously, if the academy, I believe, I could be wrong. The academy is an association. It's a nationwide association, and I believe there will be several regional teams.
Okay.
I could be wrong. So if some
is it like if you come here, you have a great chance of going pro? Yeah. Is that how they do it?
Yeah. Well, this is considered the farm system for the men's national team.
Really? I don't know. That's not cool. I don't like that.
Definitely not cool. Definitely not cool. Because I'm a big fan of rah, play for the home team.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's just like, I don't know.
Football season starting, I will be at every home game, Friday night under the lights. It's a social event. I think there's a place and it's just like labor unions. You thought this was a political show before? Forget it. It's like labor unions. They were started for the right reasons, but they become these bastardized processes, just laden with people who look for loopholes. And I'll use a labor union as an example. You don't believe that you're paid fairly? You want to gather up as a workforce and go on strike? Knock yourselves out. I believe in that process 100%. But, and this goes back to athletics too, if you decide to grab your little buddies and walk out on my sweatshop, I have the right to hire other people. Labor unions don't see it that way. Labor unions think they're allowed to turn trucks over. They think they're allowed to start fires and beat up the scabs who cross the picket line. You chose to leave your job. Knock yourself out. If you're that important, me as big fat CEO, I'm going to give you a pay increase, or I'm going to cave into your demands. If you are replaceable, guess what? You called, you bluffed, I called, you lose. Same thing with these elite. I was like, where the hell was I going with this? The same thing with these elite travel teams. They were all started for the right reasons. It was an opportunity for all the best kids in our town and the best kids in your town to gather up and start playing against each other at a higher level of competition. It was a great idea, and it started to work. Then what happened? My kid is a little too good to be playing on the Albuquerque, New Mexico travel team. And so we're going to get kids from throughout New Mexico and make this super travel team. And then that works. And then what happens? Wow, my son is a prospect. So New Mexico ain't good enough. So we're going to play for the Southwest Stranglers. And that's what happens next. And then what happens is there's Team USA. Now, again, the idea makes sense, but there are people who will just bastardize this process, and they will continue to exploit sponsors, kids, parents. That's where this stuff is all headed. And I think to slap a USA logo on the top of it is bordering on disgraceful. I think what's happening here, boy, I don't know what the governing bodies are or if this is something that has to actually go to a courthouse, but to tell a kid you may not play for your school if you want to play for us, I don't get it. I don't get it. And I think it is a huge, huge fallacy. If it's not turned around quickly, especially with things like with budget cuts and pay to play becoming more and more prevalent in high schools, boy, I don't want to overstate it and sound gloom and doom, but we could be staring down the barrel of the end of scholastic sports. Again, with the exception of football, which for some reason, I don't know why, high school football ain't going anywhere. It's still an absolute gem in the crown jewel of modern day society.
I actually, I saw this article of I think it was some town in Texas built a $60 million high school. Did you see that?
Yeah, we talked. I think that was a while back, but yeah, they built maybe 40, 60, whatever it was.
I was like, what? What?
And why?
Why? Who's paying for that?
Because, you know what? You know who is? All the oil boys in Texas high school
Unbelievable.
football.
I couldn't. This is it's like a nicer stadium than colleges. I couldn't believe it. It was like luxury boxes.
Well, when you got 3 buses of people following your high school team to every game and willing to pay the whatever it is, $10 a ticket, those things eventually start.
Power to them, man. I couldn't do that.
And now that all those games are on TV, again, high school football, I love it. I mean, I think it's great. But again, I think what's really happening here, and I do think we should do this next week. So if you're a coach and you have an opinion on how this works, whether you're an elite travel coach or a high school coach or just some dad coach who thinks he knows what he's talking about or a mom coach, I'm going to send the emails out during the week and try to elicit some response here because I think this is a big one. I got this story, like I said, it was actually a Newsday out on Long Island. It's a great article. It's a great article, and it shines a light on something that I think we're all, especially if you have younger kids, you got kids that are in early grammar school, you will probably be staring right down the barrel of this issue when your kid gets into high school, and you're going to be faced with a choice. Do we play for the home team, or do we go to an academy? Because there are far too many of them. There are far too many of them. All right. Well, aside from just this soccer stuff, you know what? We'll wrap with this. Did you see that? What the hell is her name? Michaela, what's her name? The U.S. gymnast. She won the silver medal.
I didn't see it.
Really?
No.
You're young and single. I thought you would love watching teenage girls jumping around in tights. Anyway, she won the silver medal, which in a nutshell means you're the second best in the world at what you do. This young girl, whether she meant to or not, and the still, if you can look up the still photographs, it's hysterical. She puts on a gas face on the Olympic podium while she's being awarded her medal, listening to the other national anthem. And I think, I hope I'm not overstating it, but boy, did that girl disgrace herself. She made herself. She made a face like, I should have won, or this stinks. I'm wasting my time on this podium.
Ugh.
It was disgraceful.
I mean, come on. Get a silver. It's better than nothing.
Well, again, she was also a favorite for the all-around where that adorable little girl won it.
Screw you.
Way to end it, Adam.
Yeah,
good job.
Screw that.
All right, well, listen. Make sure you're tuning in every Saturday, 9 a.m. for Hey Coach Tony on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. And make sure you're checking us out on iHeartRadio. Hope you guys enjoyed the rest of the weekend. Take it easy.